he's telling me how everything works. He's like, listen, we got 10 phones. Inmates will come up, give you their IDs, and you make a group of 10, put it right there. It's like group A, let's say. Grab another 10, that's group B. Then you call them up, hand their IDs back to them, they get on the phone, and then just the cycle continues. I'm like, okay, I think I can do that. That's pretty simple. Well, the yard is a loud place. Yelling, screaming, stuff always happening. So I got probably 10, 20 cards, ID cards in my hand. Everybody's on a bleacher waiting to use the phones and start talking to one guy. And I don't even know what the conversation was about, but I was starting to fidget with my hands kind of. Not even thinking, I take the ID cards and I start shuffling them like a deck of cards. Not even thinking that they were all in order for the phone. And as soon as I did that, there's about 20 of the biggest dudes I've ever seen stand up on the bleachers and just like get instantly because they all lost their spots on how to get on the phone.
Sam, welcome to Locked In. You came all the way from Elmira, New York. Probably our 10th or 15th guest from that upstate New York area.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. Kind of small towns up there, but also a lot going on.
Yeah.
So
my family's in Rochester, so I go.
Okay.
I think you go out that way to get to Rochester, right?
Yes.
Kind of Elmira, and then Ithaca's out that way.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, those are a couple of bigger cities. Yeah, from Rochester, probably an hour and a half.
Okay.
Hour.
Yeah, I was
like
there
that.
last week in Rochester,
Oh,
but I
okay.
flew.
Yeah.
It was easier, but on the way back, I got stuck. It was like an 8-hour trip back because there was like flight delays and then the plane got deplaned and mechanical issues flying out of Rochester.
Okay, well that doesn't even compensate then for
No, I
making good time getting there.
Exactly. That was actually my first time flying to Rochester.
Okay.
Pretty short trip, but then they got me on the way home like that, so I was screwed.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in Elmira?
I grew up just outside of Elmira, Horseheads.
Horseheads.
Yeah, in a town of Horseheads, New York.
It's got to be pretty small.
Yeah, it's fair size,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's where I grew up, born and raised. And I was always going to tell myself, I'm not going to stay in this town when I grow up. I'm going to spread my wings and do all that. So, but now I got a family and I'm still there 34 years later.
I think everyone kind of says that. Like when I was growing up in high school, everyone's like, let's get out of Danbury. And I said that too. And,
Exactly.
And even up until I think probably in the last year, I made the decision that I'm going to stay here for a while because my family's here and now we're building this business here. But the way I look at it is it doesn't really matter where exactly you live because you could travel to those places.
Exactly.
Like I don't need to live in California. I could just travel there and it's easier and cheaper cost-wise.
Yeah, that was the other thing is like, you go to the bigger cities, you're going to have bigger prices on everything and that's not the point of living. You want to enjoy things and be comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. So did you have a 2-parent household and siblings?
So I got siblings. My mother and father split when I was younger. And that was kind of before I really remember anything. So growing up, split household, and it was wasn't the best childhood, wasn't the worst. My siblings and I, we were fed and clothed and stuff like that. But it definitely wasn't the best, environment because with the split family comes the, child support and mother wants the kids, father wants the kids type of thing. So, there was a lot of that going on growing up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you think the divorce affected you emotionally?
Yeah, it definitely does. And even if you don't, that was my normal when I was growing up, split family. That was my normal. So I didn't know anything different than then. And there were even times where I lived with my grandparents. They were my primary takers for a while, even up into high school and stuff like that. So that was all kind of my normal stuff. And looking back on everything, I started realizing it wasn't like the most normal childhood, through my relationship with my wife. We've been married 14 years. I'm in therapy and, just to talk to somebody is a huge thing, you know. Therapy is a huge help. So,
and it takes a lot for a man to say that too.
It does.
You
yeah.
don't see that too often.
I've always grown up like, okay, someone's talking to a therapist, they must be psycho or something like that. But, it's almost just like this, just without the cameras.
And they're so small, you don't even really realize.
So, so that kind of, as going through that kind of revealed that my childhood wasn't totally normal, even though it felt like it as a kid.
And something I've seen talking to individuals on the show is a lot of the times the people that have gone off to prison or struggled with addiction came from a divorced family.
Yes.
And what's interesting about you is that you went a totally opposite route, but your brother had eventually got caught up in the legal system too.
Exactly.
So this, like, the psychology behind that is just super fascinating, how one goes in a completely different direction, the other one doesn't, but then you guys both came from the same circumstances and situation. Yeah,
exactly. So, excuse me. Yeah, no, we, similar situations, we got the same dad, different mothers. But again, our father got another divorce. I think it was number 3 for him at that point.
3 divorces? Yeah. Holy cow.
So he was dealing, same thing with our dad, but his mom was out in Colorado. But yeah, we both had that type of childhood and grew up, I wasn't an angel, growing up, had to kind of learn my ways and stuff like that. But he did the same and just took a different turn. And a lot of it started with, first the emotional stuff is, coming from a split family, it's kind of ingrained in you as a young child, I would say. And then I want to say around 2016, 2017, pills were big in our area. A lot of high schoolers getting into them and a lot of overdoses, things like that come with it. He actually had one buddy who passed away from it, one pill, one time, and it did him in. So once he started using that, then it turned into abusing that, and then it just led down that road, that bad road.
It's interesting that you brought up the one pill, one time thing, because I hear so many stories on the show from people that just abuse drugs for so many years, and then you see in the paper or on the news of that one person that overdosed that one time, or people that you grow up with that you hear. Like, I've lost so many people that I went to school with to drugs.
Yep.
And then I sit here on the show, and people, literally, there's guys that come on and women that come on that talk about how they've been brought back to life multiple times. And it's just like how it's interesting how the universe works, where some people live, some people don't, how some people make it through it and others don't, and how some people use that as their purpose to help others too. But they've gone through so much, whereas others don't go through that and just pass away very quickly.
Yeah, and I've always thought of something like that as maybe like a tolerance, but again, I don't know.
Now, with your parents being divorced, how did that affect your view on marriage, if it did at all?
So it didn't too much because, so it affected it kind of in a good and bad way. How I said my grandparents were a huge influence in my life, primary caretakers. They had they've been married, I want to say 50 some years.
Wow.
So they got a strong marriage. Their marriage is good and lasted and time tested and stuff. So I had that to look into. But on the flip side, with the split family, I was like, I don't ever want that. I'll do everything I can to not let that happen. And so that was a driving motivation factor right there is, see the negative and just do the opposite.
Yeah.
So
the mindset's interesting because not everyone thinks that way.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's probably hard to break the pattern, of generation divorced, remarried, another generation divorced, remarried. It's easy to get into the pattern, but it's harder to go against it, even though it's, that's not what you want.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about getting into voiceover? Your voice is so like soothing.
Is it?
Yeah, like you have like an interesting. It doesn't even seem like a New York accent, kind of.
Oh, okay. No.
You ever been told that? You got to look into that.
I should actually.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things I get are like people think I'm Midwestern.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yep.
Or
They're
Southern.
like, you sound like you're from Milwaukee or somewhere out there. So
yeah.
Just New York guy.
And you know what else is interesting too is, so we have a lot of correctional officers on the show that we were talking about. And when I was in prison, the different ones I've had on the show, they all look one type of way that all of the other ones that I've encountered in my life when I was in prison look. Like you have the big bulky ones, and you have like the clean cut guys. You got the country guys like with the beard, which was like the category I'd put you in.
Yeah.
You have the nerdy ones. It's just like there's different classifications, but they all kind of fit into that. It's so intriguing.
Oh, absolutely. So I remember one of a correctional officer told me when I first went in, he's like, you got all different walks of life in as guards. He's like pointing at other guys. He's like, he's a mechanic. He sells cars. He used to do roofs, and, he'll do roofs on the side. This guy fixed my dryer last month, So, all these different professions all came for the pension and the pay.
Now, when you were in high school, did you see yourself becoming a correctional officer?
Oh, no, not at all. So it wasn't even on my radar.
What changed that put that on your radar and kind of changed your trajectory?
So since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be a state trooper.
Okay.
Yep, New York State Trooper, actually. And what had changed for me to get into corrections was honestly, the fact of the future, looking into the future. Because I never really heard about, talked about, knew any correctional officers, prison guards. Didn't know anybody. Heard stories, things like that. But I just knew it was a shitty job. So, but what kind of changed it was my grandfather had messaged me. And he's like, hey, there's a test coming up. I was doing asphalt at the time. So, driving trucks of asphalt, shoveling, raking, paver work. It was seasonal, hot, hard work. So he was like, hey, he's like, if you got a pension, you got benefits, good pay, all that stuff, you work, and he's like, the best part is you work for the state, and I was younger and I'm like, cool, work for the state. It's a steady paycheck, got family to feed and mortgage and all that stuff. So that's, my grandfather got me into it.
When you decided to go into it, did you think you were going to make it the long haul where you do like your 20 or whatever they have you do
absolutely.
and then get the pension?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Because it was a long process from signing up for the test to actually becoming a prison guard. And it took over a year, and the whole time I was always thinking about it, stewing on it. And I'm like, if I go into this job, it's got to be a forever thing, do my 25, collect a pension, all that stuff, and be good to go. And it didn't work out. Did not work out.
When you finally make it to the academy, what type of people are in there? Is it people from is it all young individuals that this is their first career, or is it second career? That's
a great question, actually, because I was 27 when I went in. And I want to say 90% of my class that I was in with, 21 years old, just turned 21. So a lot of them take tests. You can take the civil service test at 18, but you have to wait till you're 21 to be hired on. So a lot of them have taken the test, waited their year and a half, turned 21, and then went into the academy from there.
Did you ever get a chance to ask them what their reason was for signing up? If that was a career choice or a stepping stone or what the...
So a lot of them was, my father's a guard. My father's a lieutenant. My father's I got all my uncles are prison guards, that type of thing. So it looked a lot like those influences are the ones that told them hey, get into the academy young, get your 25 years in and get out young type of thing.
Now, pay-wise, what's the difference between joining the corrections and then working in like a state job somewhere else where there's no risk, like when your life's not in danger?
Yeah, the hazard risk. So starting off, you're not really making the big bucks. And I mean, even really until you're vetted, got 7 to 10 years in, you're not really making too much money. But I believe in 2017, when I was going through the academy, it was for the first year, 45 a year type of, I think.
Okay.
Yep. So, and then once you get to, I think 7 years, you're bringing in 70,000 a year.
And I mean, it sounds like it's better to work for the feds at that point, because I think the feds start higher.
Probably. Yeah, probably. That was another thing too, is like, I didn't really know anybody going in, but I'd seen some prison guards and they got boats and RVs and motorcycles and stuff. I'm like, man, they make good money, but a lot of it is the overtime.
Yeah.
Whether you sign up the overtime book or you're voluntold.
Yeah, and that's like police officers.
Yep.
Like you read the local paper where they publish like the highest paid officials in the city. At least they do that in our town.
Yep.
And it's all police and firefighters, 6 figures high, like, almost $200,000.
Yep.
But that's all overtime. When you look at the percentages,
Exactly.
like the base is only 60 or 70 and then everything else is overtime.
Yep. So, but it's, it comes with a price because, the time off was nice. You get 6 weeks, vacation and stuff, but the other, 46 weeks of the year, is sometimes not worth that 6 weeks off.
Now, in the academy, are they actually being honest with you to tell you what are some of the dangers that can be faced? Because I feel like if you listen to some of these episodes where guys are talking about what goes on, who in their right mind would want to be a correctional officer?
That's another good question. They do. Yep. So yeah, they tell you, just some wild stories, and they really kind of let you know like what you're coming into. And, the first week, a lot of people kind of just drop out. So whether they, physically can't do it, or there's, you start hearing things and you're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So yeah, the first week people drop out. But yeah, they definitely give you the lowdown on everything.
So they give you the unfiltered version.
Yeah.
So they'll say like there's a possibility you get shanked or anything.
Yep.
Wow.
So, and and they also tell you too with, max, medium, minimums, things like that. They let you in a little bit on what to expect, stuff like that, because it's wildly different, between the three. So, but yeah, they let you know, and that might be one of the ways of, kind of weeding them out.
But you don't get a choice as a new recruit to see which place you want to go to.
No, you don't. You can get a list. They give you a list, and I think you circle maybe three of the ones that you want to go to, and from my understanding, they try to get you there, but it's wherever you're needed.
What's a funny comparison is that they do that to inmates. When you're sentenced, the judge can recommend.
Oh, really?
At sentencing, the judge will say, where would you like to go? Just a recommendation, but it's up to generally the prison system or the Federal Bureau of Prisons to decide. And your attorney will say, we want to go here. And he puts in that recommendation.
Okay.
9 times out of 10, that's not the one you're going to, and they're sending you wherever. But it's interesting that they do that to the inmates and the officers in a sense, too.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's New York State then.
Wow. So what was your first prison that you go to?
So my first prison was Great Meadow, Comstock, up by Lake George. And that's a max prison.
Wow.
Yep.
Max, your first gig.
Max, my first gig. So, and it's like, they called Comstock a gladiator school. It's old. You're either roasting hot or you're freezing cold, and it's an old prison.
No AC, nothing.
Nope. So, and they kind of have an old school way of running things as well. When I was there, it was, Inmates line up 2 by 2. There's no talking in the hallways. You keep up, you keep the pace, and you get to where you're going. That's it. So they were very strict and straightforward with that. So, but it was definitely, you're sitting in the parking lot on your first day, and, you got a couple of buddies with you, and you're like, anybody else ever been in a prison before? Like, nope. All right.
Oh, so you do have new recruits coming in with you too. You're not the only.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So there's usually a group of us. Yep. And our first day, maybe 10, 12, something like that. And one guy didn't make it past the locker rooms. We were doing the tour before we even started getting into the yard, before we got into the common grounds and the hallways and stuff. We were doing all the admin stuff and locker rooms, getting assigned lockers. And one dude was like, didn't make it past the locker room. Wow. He's like, nope, I'm good. This isn't for me.
Now, in the academy, how much real on-the-job experience are you getting trained? Are you going into the prison at all, or is that your very first time?
So in the academy, you do you visit, I want to say 2 prisons, and you do a walkthrough as a group, and that's about it. And it's maybe a couple hours, if that, So that's really the only hands-on training in a prison that you get.
How did you feel about that from your perspective?
It wasn't too bad for me, So it's not the locked in part, because maybe if I was an inmate, it'd be, you're locked in. But being able to, do a job, move around a little bit was nice. But it was a lot to take in too, because it was not a job I've ever had before. Never even, not even done security type work. So this was all new to me. So I had to look at it like that. I had to view it as, this is a whole new world. This isn't like a little job you go to and, play on your cell phone and a customer comes in and you can mess around and stuff. This is it's a legit prison job.
Yeah,
so
they take away your phones, right? You're not allowed to have them.
Yeah, you don't even bring it in.
Yeah.
So
that's got to be one of the only jobs in America where you have no phone on you for that many hours.
No kidding.
Imagine if something happens on the outside to a family. I guess they could call the prison to say.
Yeah. Yep. They do that. Yeah. There's some type of way to get in for emergencies and stuff like that. Okay. So because that's how I found out my wife was going into labor one time.
Really? While you were working?
Yeah.
They let you leave though?
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was nice.
So a couple episodes ago, we had an OG prison guard from Philly, Michael Smith, real kind of bulldog, aggressive, old school type of guard. As a new officer on the block, in your scenario, what were those OG guys saying to you and treating you guys as your first, time in?
Yeah. So yeah, Schmitty. Yeah. And I listened to the episode and I'm like, there's a Schmitty in every prison. There's really? A Schmitty prison guard in every prison, there's always a Schmitty. So yeah, there's tons of them there who love the job, love what they do. And a lot of them were, coming in 2017, I didn't know the old way, even, let's say even 10 years ago. I came in and we had pipes where we had to do rounds, hourly rounds, maybe half-hour rounds, hit the buzzer, and it logs that you did your rounds, stuff like that. That's all I've known. The older group, that's all new to them, and nobody really likes it. And doing there's some rules that are newer coming in that when you're young into it like I was, you don't know any better. That's just what you're taught. It's what you're come into. But if you've done 20 years and now they're start saying hey, you got to do this. Hey, you got to do that. They're not big fans of that.
Yeah. Were there scenarios where you saw an officer doing one thing, but the academy taught you something completely different and you're kind of at a standpoint?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, you get in a lot of scenarios to where, the academy teaches you kind of like the books, how to, go off of the books and do it like this. But sometimes it doesn't account for, like the inmate, father just passed away and he's not doing well. He might hang up any minute. He's right on the edge of, losing it. You go by the books, you try to check mark all these things. Meanwhile, this dude is, he wants something, he needs something, even just somebody to talk to, so that's to where you kind of have to be like, okay, I'm going to skip steps 1 through 3 and go right to step 4 and take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. So.
When do you think was the first instance where you realized like this is a crazy place and this is like, wow?
So I got a story about that part. So
we love a good story.
This was Comstock, and I was doing like swing shifts. So I was like a midnight officer, days, evenings, and it wasn't bad because it was nice to learn everything and like prisons are very regimented. Times are always on time, stuff like that. So it was an evening shift, and I'm out in the yard with another officer. We're just walking around, and he's telling me about things, and then I'd go with another officer, and he'd tell me a little bit about, how the phones work. And there's a shack, and there's some slots, and he's telling me how everything works. He's like, listen, we got 10 phones. Inmates will come up, give you their IDs, and you make a group of 10, put it right there. It's like group A, let's say. Grab another 10, that's group B. Then you call them up, hand their IDs back to them, they get on the phone, and then just the cycle continues. So I'm like, okay, I think I can do that. It's pretty simple. Well, it's dark out, everything's going on, and like the yard is a loud place, yelling, screaming, stuff always happening. And so I got probably 10, 20 cards, ID cards in my hand. And everybody's on a bleacher waiting to use the phones and start talking to one guy. And I don't even know what the conversation was about, but I was starting to like, fidget with my hands kind of. You doing something with my hands? Not even thinking, I take the ID cards and I start shuffling them like a deck of cards. Not even thinking that they were all in order for the phone. And as soon as I did that, there's about 20 of the biggest dudes I've ever seen stand up on the bleachers and just like get pissed instantly because they all lost their spots on how to get on the phone. Like that guy's ID who was on top is now mixed into the pile. And I'm just like, my gut dropped. I'm like, worst mistake ever. Yeah, and like my training officer was like, he's like, that's on you. So everything turned out well. There was some inmate there who was like, yo, you can't do that. Like he's like, I understand you're new. This was like my 3rd day, in there. He's like, so he kind of like quelled everything down. He must have been like a big advocate for a lot of stuff going on because everybody kind of talked to him. So thank God he was there. He kind of quelled things down a little bit. Did you ever find some of like the maybe nerdy inmates or inmates that didn't really run with anyone kind of taking a liking to you because they were looking kind of like for a friend to the new guys? Yes. And they were kind of like the like construction worker, middle class kind of people, who'd always kind of try to relate somehow, because like, my hands are usually dirty from working. I'm an outdoor kind of guy. And so they always try to, work something in and talk to you like that and stuff like that. Just from, I think there's people in there who are like great profilers, and that's the thing they tell you in the academy too. They're like, listen, just be you, who you are. Like they'll see through bullshit, don't be a tough guy. And then when shit hits the fan, you're out of there, and vice versa. So don't be a super nice guy coming off and then be an asshole once things, go south or something. Just be who you are and they'll see it.
Yeah, because they will try you.
Exactly.
Did you see some of the newer recruits you were with getting tried or were too soft?
I can't really specifically think of anything like that, but there have been times where, I've seen a couple officers just kind of not knowing and running around grabbing some stuff that they need and things like that, and like kind of doing extra stuff that was still kind of work, but not necessary. Things like that. So yeah, that was, always there, trying to get a little extra and whatnot.
Yeah, it's the dynamics are always fascinating, and the inmates have they get to profile, like you were saying, guards very well because they know the routine. And was it like quarterly where you'd be in certain units quarterly and they'd switch you, or how would that work?
Oh, okay. So I started out in Comstock, and I just got thrown into any job they needed me to. Okay. I did that for a few months. I headed back to 5 Points. That's where I got my first bid, actually. With less than a year on the job, I was in the kitchen there. And that was more, I knew what my days off, I knew what squad I was going to be, my schedule. Instead of going every 2 weeks or every 6 weeks where jobs would change and they put you where you're needed, I could get this bid, and I got it, and I'm there all day, every day. So that was my thing for a while.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know they did that.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So some guys love being like a resource where they bounce around a little bit like that. But because I was farther away from home, it was nice to kind of get on a schedule and swap if need be, know what days off I have, and schedule my life outside of that.
Now, are you close with your coworkers when you're working there? Like, are guys going out for food and drinks? Are they having each other over?
So most of the time, yeah. Yep. Most of the time it is that. It's, there's a lot of camaraderie in there, and there's like, I've made some awesome friends, who are even, miles away. But yeah, there's a lot of, like, hey, we get along at work and in a prison, we'd probably have a great time outside. You want to grab a beer kind of thing.
Yeah, because you spend so many hours with these individuals, especially when you're on overtime with them.
Exactly.
Do they have like showers and stuff for you guys?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So, down in the locker room, stuff like that, weight room and stuff. So that's nice. But then there's because there is so many different walks of life as prison guards. There's some that you just, you don't click with. Maybe they're too boring, or, somebody's got a weird hobby or something like that. And, you guys are just opposites.
What did your wife think about your job? And your family members? Yeah,
they all loved it, because it's, for my area, it's a great gig. It's a good job, pension and benefits and stuff like that. So for, my friends and my family and stuff, they were like, this is awesome, good for you. You had a couple who were like, you're going to find out real quick it's a shitty job. There were a couple of people like that, but everybody was very encouraging of it. Yeah.
How often do real, like, out in the free world events affect the inmates in the prison? Like, say there's something going on with an officer involved shooting in the real world, or anything, any dynamic, any hot situation. Okay, yep. How does that translate into the prison and the dynamics, and what are you guys doing to prepare for that?
So I didn't see too much of that, to be honest with you. I didn't see too much of it, but the big thing was the George Floyd. The George Floyd thing was a big thing going on in there. And I don't think the inmates were riled up about it. I mean, probably the straw, of course, kind of rocked a lot of people. But to my knowledge, there was no like revolution planned and anything like that. So that was nice. But there was a lot of common ground, actually between prison guards and inmates, to where we all agreed like that was bad. There's no justifying, what had happened, choking the dude with his knee or whatever, however it went down. So there was a lot more common ground on that than expected.
Were there inmates that were former cops that you guys had to kind of look out for after that happened?
No, not to my knowledge. There were, there's in prison you got the former cops and the, former prison guards even too who do some shit and end up there. But they're already just kind of PC'd kind of thing and not roaming around.
What's the general consensus of those prison guards that do something corrupt and end up in prison?
What do you mean?
Like, how are the other guards talking about them? Are they looking out after them, or are they like, okay, you kind of screwed up the badge? And
so, yeah, both ways. Both ways in the sense of like, if he was a toucher or a pedophile, like that's no good.
Did they call them chomos?
Call them what?
Chomos.
Oh yeah, chomos, diaper sniper. Shit like that. So that was definitely all frowned upon, no respect there. But, maybe in another instance, it's kind of, you're still like, oh, we know this job gets to you. Like, I'd, come home in a bed, you see your wife fucking another man or something, you lose it, pull your gun out, anything could happen, like that's the human, behavior and job stress compounds and stuff, not that it's relatable, but it's not chomo stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Chomo's at the bottom of the barrel in prison.
Yeah.
What were some like terms and lingos and habits you kind of like never knew existed in the world until you worked in a prison and kind of saw it firsthand? Some
terms and lingos.
Or even habits. Like for me, when I went there, sitting to pee as a man, I never thought was a thing.
Oh, okay.
So you would see things like that in prison. Knocking on the table before you got up was a thing too when I was in.
Let me think about that one. I'm not sure.
I would see guys wash their drawers, boxers separately because they didn't want to put it in the communal laundry thing, which was so strange too.
Yep. Yeah, I did see a lot of that, because the commissary, you could get your own fabric softener and detergent and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. One thing I did pick up from it was a lot of inmates used mayonnaise to cook, like a butter.
Yeah, mayonnaise is and the oil in it, you can melt it, extract it from it.
Yeah. So I remember I was walking down a gallery one day and I'm like, damn, it smells pretty good in here. And there's an inmate cooking like spam and canned seafood was a big thing too.
Oysters. And what else? Oysters, clams, I think we had.
Yeah.
Around the holidays stuff. We would get that.
Yeah. So, and I'm not a big seafood person, but this person cooking was smelling good, And so I asked him, I'm like, what are you making down here? He's like, I start with the mayonnaise, get it heated up and cook up all this other stuff and then like spices like crazy.
Yeah. You know what I found was really good, and I did it a couple times since I've been out, is ramen noodles mixed with a little mayonnaise, maybe a little hot sauce, because it makes it like creamy.
Oh, okay.
The ramen noodles. You take the water out, maybe just leave a tiny little bit in.
Yep.
You mix it up with the seasoning and the mayo, and it's good.
Okay.
I kind of miss prison food, honestly, sometimes. Like the nachos, the burritos. It's so much sodium. But
oh, gosh, yeah. So there's a YouTube guy out there who, you've probably seen him, who shows you how to make prison food.
D. Peasy, is that his name?
Maybe.
Okay.
And
Or
at the
Larry
end, he's like,
Lawton.
is it bussin' or disgusting?
Yeah. Oh, so he's coming on the show. I was supposed to film him last week in LA, but then I had a family thing that I had to go to. But he's going to be on the show.
Oh, that's
He's
awesome.
got like 1 million followers on TikTok.
I love watching his
He's
videos.
like, that's bussin'.
Yeah. He even makes drinks. He makes drinks too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He makes some really good prison
cool dude.
food.
Really cool dude. I'm looking forward to getting him on the show. He's like the OG of it.
Oh, okay.
So as a correctional officer, and this is during your time and when this genre was kind of taking off, were you watching stuff to kind of get like a behind the scenes look at what some guys are doing?
Not really. So a couple of things, and where you can find some like leaked videos from inside a prison or something like that. People got the prison cell phones and stuff. So I was watching things like that, but I'm not big on social media, so I don't really go searching too much. But I did come across a couple, videos of inmates down in Tennessee and, fights going on, stuff like that. It's always interesting to watch.
Were there phones getting brought into your prison that you were in?
No.
Okay.
No.
Even in 2017 now.
Yeah, no. Wow. So the big thing was, the K2, that synthetic marijuana that makes anybody geek right out.
I'm curious about that. So in federal prison, guys were spraying it on paper, getting it in, and they would cut the strips and sell like one sheet of paper would go for like $5,000. So then they started photocopying everyone's mail. So you didn't get your actual mail. You got a photocopy of it.
Oh, okay.
How did you guys find out about it, and what did you guys do to combat it?
Situations like that, anything that came in, getting x-rayed, getting, cans were a big thing where you could buy like something to seal back up a can, stuff it full of drugs, seal it back up, and good. So we would do, x-ray a lot of stuff. And I mean, in that instance, you can't, I don't know if we could really even tell what paper is laced or not,
Mm-hmm.
So, but I have heard stories similar to that where they would use some kind of drug, like a liquid drug, liquid ecstasy, things like that. And they would put them in a magazine to send in, and it would only be like, okay, only put it on like the black tires of the car magazine, something like that. So there'd be specific areas in the magazine that were laced and others that were not.
Yeah.
So how you combat that, I don't know.
And have you seen like some pretty crazy things from inmates using K2? Because I've seen some wild stuff. They would put like a chair for them in the bathroom because they would just knock out and just be slumped over.
Yeah. That's the big thing is they just slump over and do that. I saw one black guy turn white. I mean, it was like I thought he was dead, like walking dead. He was normal black guy, smoked some K2, maybe too much of it, and I mean he was not looking good, But
and you guys couldn't test for K2, right?
No. I mean, not to my knowledge, because everything was just like a potpourri of stuff getting in. So,
did you ever work the phones as an officer?
Yes.
What was that? Give me like the strangest conversation you've ever heard.
Worst job ever, too. Worst job ever. You hear all sorts of stuff, but a lot of the stuff I would hear is, guys begging for money and being like, man, I need a new hot pod and my radio's broken, my Walkman skips and all this stuff. And, a lot of just kind of smoozing on the phone to get some stuff. So I tried not to, excuse me, even though you work the phones, I'm not really trying to pry into the, what's going on or anything like that, just as long as everybody's just talking and doing what they're supposed to, there's so much other stuff going on that those conversations don't even matter to me,
How often are like illegal activities or schemes getting uncovered on the phones, if any at all? Or are they being smarter than that?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure. There's probably a good percentage, because all your phone calls, I believe, are recorded, stuff like that. So, but nothing has ever came across to me and was like, hey, we just heard on the phone, it's going down at 3:00 this afternoon. Nothing's ever come across like that to me.
Yeah, when I was at the prison camp, there was this old guy that just came into our cell. He was a pilot. He did some type of fraud or whatever. And everyone knew at the camp when you're arranging a bag drop, like from outside, you do it on a cell phone. This guy did it on the wall phone, casually saying, hey, drop it off at this time. You work landscaping, drop it off at this time at this place, and I'll go grab it. That same night, we're all sitting there, and 3 COs come to the room, grab him, handcuff him, and bring him the shoe, and no one ever saw him again.
No kidding.
And we found out later it was because he said that on the phone.
Yep. So, see, that must be a pattern too, because not the phone part, but the outside workers. I've heard of that happening where somebody will throw like, hey, there's going to be an Arby's bag in the grass. When you're mowing, pick it up. It'll have, ceramic blades in it, drugs in it, stuff like that. And those outside workers, they're kept separate in Elmira for that reason right there. They don't get mixed in with general population or anything like that. They got their own gallery and their own amenities and stuff like that, because it is probably very easy to just get a garbage bag, looks like garbage, full of drugs or weapons, and sneak it in.
Yeah.
So,
what was the craziest or weirdest thing you've seen contraband-wise smuggled in?
Oh, so sometimes people would bring contraband in the old-fashioned way, the visit room, and they get bussed up from New York City to Elmira, and all sorts of walks of life, especially on like a hot day or something, everybody's standing in line for hours to get a visit and stuff. So sometimes things get a little tense up there. There was one guy though, and he was known for always having drugs, but you can never pin it on him, And he had a visit. We're keeping eyes on him, and making sure nothing's coming in and all of that stuff. And there's the frisk room when you leave visits. And something was going on, and we had to double check the cameras, because we heard just chit chat talk about something got through, and sure enough, this guy, his girl passed him big sausage full of weed or something like that, and the guys made like a circle around him. Other inmates made a circle around him, and he was trying to put it up his butt, his prison pocket.
In the prison, in the room.
In the prison room, yeah. Oh, right in plain sight, but, everybody around him, it was hard to see, and they might send up 2 guys to go talk to officers to distract them about something. Well, this guy had a big wad of it, and it was literally a pain in the ass for him to get it up there. You saw, he'd pull it out, spit on it, put it back in his pants, and then he was hopping on the chair to make it fit. And it was wild, and I'm like, that guy is dedicated, and I mean, I don't know how much drugs go for in prison, but it had to been a large amount, because for him to do that, it had to been worth it. I mean, it was a full Italian sausage.
And speaking of money, were the guards aware of what the currency was? Like, would you guys be on the lookout to make sure no one was accumulating X amount because you guys knew that was money?
Yes, yeah. Cigarettes were a huge thing, you know.
There were still cigarettes allowed.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, I know, and it's funny because New York State would sell the cigarettes in commissary and the tobacco and papers, but wouldn't let them smoke in their cells. Don't know smoking in the building, all that stuff. So it was, that was a big gripe right there, was they're selling us all this tobacco and we can't smoke it in our cells, which is our house. And we have to wait for our couple of hours of outside time or something like that, so that didn't really make sense.
It's better than nothing, though.
Exactly. Yeah. So, cigarettes were a big currency for there. And I found that out kind of, they told you a little bit about it in the academy. But I remember walking in doing a cell frisk, and some high up, I want to say it was a Trinitarian gang leader, tons of cigarettes, Newports, all Newport hundreds or Kings or stuff, like that. I'm like, holy cow, you must smoke a lot, man. I didn't know he's like, nah, I don't even smoke. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yep. So it was his piggy bank.
So what kind of guard were you? Were you the one that would say, oh, you're only allowed to have this many items, I'm taking it? Or were you the guy that would let those type of things slide?
So if it was a small ordeal, I'm not even worrying about it. It's not worth it. I mean, I kind of had that mindset going in, like every little thing has got to be accounted for, taken care of, like, why are there 5 sugar packets over there? You guys making hooch or something? Like it stresses you out too much, and like life goes on, with somebody sneaking out sugar packets or something. But no, I was, if it wasn't a huge deal, nothing crazy, let it slide.
How are they?
Because there's kind of no stopping it either.
Yeah. How were they making hooch?
In bags. They'd make a hooch in the bags where I'm not totally sure all the ingredients, but a lot of sugar, fruit, and bread. Maybe a little ketchup too they would put into it.
Ketchup?
Yep.
Ugh.
I heard that, because the ketchup has got the vinegar. So, yeah, talk about like a mosh pit of oranges and grapes and bread and ketchup.
You're drinking mold, really, is what you're drinking.
Pretty much,
right?
yeah.
That's what it's like, fermented, or it's crazy.
Yep. And you can smell it too. Walking, you can pinpoint who's, because Elmira is all steel gates. Everything's open, so no doors type of thing. And so you smell everything. And
guys are doing it in their cell, or are they hiding it somewhere else?
In their cells.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of ballsy.
Yep. So, that's what you got to look out for is, you might not, you can smell it, smells strong, but it's got to be one of these cells around here, and, whatever. Something
you were telling me earlier is that as you were beginning your career, your brother was on the other side of the criminal justice system.
Yes. So as I was going through academy, my brother was going through Chemung County jail for, I don't know if I should say Chemung County. Going through county jail.
We could cut the Chemung part.
He was going through county jail for armed robbery and breaking and entering. So, which ironically turned out to be an ex-correctional officer's house that he had broken into. So he was 17 at the time, and he's at this point when he does that, he's in like full addiction mode at 17 years old. He he was a big gamer, sold his gaming systems, and TVs were missing out of the house, stuff like that. And I mean, he was anything that wasn't bolted down, he tried to sell, for the drugs. So that's the state he was at during this, and they didn't catch him. They didn't catch him right away, but he was 17 at the time. His accomplices were minors, so they kind of more got like a slap on the wrist. And then I think they tried him as an adult. So yeah, it was tense times, and I want to say before that breaking and entering as well, I'd always get phone calls about him, 11, 12, midnight, getting phone calls of my brother just being geeked out on pills, not acting right, stuff like that. So, I'd go and check up on him, try to calm him down a little bit like that. And, the addiction was bad. He tried running, the cops had came to the house and We're all trying to talk to him and stuff like that. And he's got his backpack on and he's, for some reason, just like ready to run and leave, you know, and the cops were like, listen, you're not doing good. We need to talk to you, understand? So he takes off. And in my mind, I was like, okay, everybody has seen those cop shows, you know, and I'm like, they're going to tase them, they're going to tackle them, whatever. So I take after him and I tackled him through my father's fence, broke the gate down and everything, you know, because I'm like, shit, if he's getting tackled, I'd rather, you know, I'm not going to beat the shit out of him. I'm just going to, you know, help him out a little bit. So that happened, you know, that was kind of our dynamic. So he got tried and he originally, I want to say he got sentenced for 5 years. He could have gotten out 3.5 on good behavior. Cause I think that's like the most that he could get off was 1.5 years of good behavior. And, he started out in a medium, which I've never been to a medium, but from my understanding, it's, you know, it's still prison, but a lot more free movement than a max. So he went there and he's just you know, coming out of that addict stage and, you know, he's not from the big city. He, you know, not really involved in all of that stuff, but I'm guessing he probably went to prison and tried making a name for himself, you know, not to be punked around or anything, which good for him. But that ended up backfiring a lot because he got all his good time taken away. So he couldn't do anything. He had to do his full 5 years. And then he went from a medium. Then he got sent up to Clinton. Up north was a max, and never been to Clinton, but it's not a good.
I've heard of it. Yeah, we had, I think, one guy that went to Clinton on the show. Okay,
so yeah, and that's where that's where the big escape was.
At Clinton.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
At Clinton. So yeah, he went up there, and by this time he had been in a prison, and you know, I let all my supervisors know, like, hey, this is, you know, I'm a guard. He's an inmate. This is where he's at. Just gotta, you know, CYA kind of thing in case anything happens. And there was no communication between us. Just because, you know, I missed him. You know, I love him, but it's the fact that, you know, I don't want to send in pictures. I don't want to write letters and my addresses and stuff like that being leaked or something happen. You know, that was my biggest fear is, you know, my personal life getting involved with that. So I'm like, you know, he'll do his time and I'll welcome him with open arms when he gets out.
Did you check up on him at all when you were, as an officer, were you able to look him up and see how he was doing?
Yeah, you know, just public stuff. I just looked up some public information. And I just kind of kept track of, you know, where he's going and stuff like that. So
did your parents look to you for guidance to kind of see how he was holding up, kind of ask you questions to see what his experience was like?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, you know, because you know, they really took care of him while he was in there. Sending him lots of money. He had nice clothes, you know, sending him stuff. And they, you know, I would kind of say, you know, they didn't go without them on the outside, but they definitely, like, it put a effect on their wallet in a sense to be supporting him as well in there. But yeah, there were times where they were like, hey, you know, he's looking to get another hot pot, or he needs another TV because things are happening. Does this really happen? Yeah, people steal your TV, people steal your hot pots, but people trade hot pots and stuff like that, and owe debts too. You know, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. You know, I mean, so it could be a mixture of anything. So
yeah, so many parents are curious about how their child is doing in prison.
Exactly.
And the dynamics, because as inmates, you don't really want to talk about it and show as a sign of weakness talking over the phone or tell them what's really going on.
Yep.
So it's great where parents can tune into a show like this. If they have a loved one in prison, they can kind of see what's happening firsthand and see the different dynamics.
Exactly. Yep. So, yeah, and I told them what would make it, I gave them some advice to, like, listen, if you're going to send things, it's easier to send them from a third-party vendor that's already, like, checked out and everything's good. Stuff like that, So there were third-party vendors that would, send in clothes and food and stuff like that. That was the easiest way to go through.
So you went into this job thinking this was going to be your life's long career, retire, get the pension and all that, but you ended up leaving after a few years.
Yes.
What happened?
So a lot of it was COVID. COVID really fucked a lot of things up, in the prison system, at least with my experience, because, it was everything was always changing because I don't think prison system has ever had a pandemic like this before, So a lot of things were getting changed, It was inmates have to wear a mask, make sure they wear the mask at all times, like that's not going to work, and when they're done eating at the table, make sure they put their mask on. And how are you going to tell 300 dudes to do that in a chow hall? And now officers can have to wear masks, but they can't wear their own mask they bring in. They have to wear the state-provided ones. And if you got a temperature, then, you get scanned on your forehead walking into the building. If you got any signs, then it's a 2-week quarantine paid by the state. So everybody's going to milk that.
Yeah, I remember when those, because I worked at Whole Foods, everyone was getting those paid things in the beginning.
Yep. So COVID kind of definitely sucked. But a big thing was just working for the state. Working for New York State was just, I didn't like it at all. A lot of paperwork, kind of bureaucratic environment type thing, and it just wasn't for me. And there were numerous days where I'm doing 16 hours in a prison, and I'm looking outside, and it's like beautiful sunny day, birds are singing, and I'm like, oh man, I'd do anything to like just leave right now.
To have that freedom,
exactly.
Yeah, flexibility.
Yeah. So, and I'd only do 8 or 16 hours. I wasn't doing like 25 to life or anything like that.
Yeah, because when you're on a lunch break, you can't like leave, right, and go out and get something.
Yeah, no, you bring everything right in.
Yeah.
So
it's a whole different type of job and career.
Oh gosh, yeah.
How did that make you feel leaving and walking away from something that you thought was your career path and what you were doing? And you put so much time and energy into becoming that person, and it kind of feels like a little bit of a failure aspect in that level. Yeah,
it was a hard decision to start with, for one. Definitely a hard decision. And you kind of build an identity too as a guard. And that's who you hang out with. That's your whole life pretty much. If you're doing 16-hour days, you're a guard your whole life. And so there was a little identity thing that was kind of like letting go of. But it was kind of a double-edged sword. There was a relief of, being my own boss, doing, start my own business, doing what I want to do and what I love to do. But also too, like, you can't kick your feet up at a desk and just collect a paycheck. You gotta pursue and go after jobs, and if you don't work, you're not making money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you regret leaving at all?
No, not at all. So, I'd seen many guys too who were well past their 25-year, could have retired, and they have a heart attack. They never see retirement, or they retire and life expectancy is not that long being an ex-prison guard, and they have a heart attack shoveling their driveway, something like that, and I was like, I don't know if I want to give up my prime years, 25 to 50. I don't know if I want to give that up and not even enjoy retirement if I make it.
Yeah.
So I'm doing it, kind of feel like I'm doing it a little backwards. I'm going to enjoy what I like now and love what I like and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you're trained growing up you got to work hard and put in all these years and this and that just so you can enjoy life at 60. But look at all the people that don't make it to 60, and life is just too short to have that mentality.
Yep.
Like that's the way I live my life now. It's just you got to do what makes you happy now.
Oh, absolutely.
Obviously, you have to work and make money unless like you're born into wealth and you're set on that level. But I think there's common ground where you can meet in the middle, where like your job doesn't have to be your entire life and you practice kind of a balance and you find something that makes you happy, because there is something out there for everyone that you could do. And now in this world more than ever, you can have your hobby and passion as your full-time gig.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So there were, once I resigned, it was people started kind of dropping off. Same thing, and I mean, even guys with more time than me who, over 10 years, they're like, this isn't worth it anymore, and cutting it short.
It's a tough job. And, I even more than ever, I have more respect now than I even did as an inmate myself for the correctional officers, because it's hard.
Oh, yeah.
And I know what they're up against, and interviewing them on the show, it's an incredible perspective. And I feel for them and I commend them, and I know how hard it is. And you see they're struggling because now they're doing all these ads. Even the Bureau of Prisons, I see the ads, like how they're upping all the perks that come with it because they're trying to get people in the door.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So, I think New York State is doing something now, too, where they're giving you, like, paternity leave, like a good amount. So,
they got to get people in.
Exactly.
But then also at the same token, that they got to fix the criminal justice system anyways, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in there that don't need to be in there, and just restructuring it in general.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's some, you come across some people and you're like, you deserve to be in here, and there's other people who are like, that could have been anybody.
It really can.
You punch somebody in the face at a bar, they fall down, they go into a coma and never wake up. Now you're in for murder. So, yeah, it happens.
It's crazy.
Yep.
But, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great chatting with you. We always love our correctional officers on the show. And glad you are doing something new with your life, and you're happy doing it.
Yes.
And thank you for being a supporter of the show and taking the time to reach out to come on.
Yeah, thanks for having just an average Joe like me on here.
That's what we're all about.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being on here now that after listening for all this time.
What were your expectations versus the reality coming into it as a listener?
Honestly, it's a lot more relaxed in here than I thought. So, and it's not as scripted as I thought either. So I thought it'd be a little bit more scripted and, more in a guideline type of thing, but you just ask questions and we talk.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about the art of interviewing, and I've come a long way from my first few episodes. So now I do it all off the top of my head.
That's awesome, man. Good for you.
Thank you, bro.
Yep.
Safe travels back to good old Elmira.
Absolutely.
And keep in touch.
All right. Thank you.